Good morning. I'm Steve Wolf, Wholesale Marketing Associate at Sprague Energy.
And I'm Joel Williams, Director of Refined Product Sales here at Sprague Energy. And today we're going to take a look. We got our new studio. Our budget line item finally came through for some chairs here, so we're going to give it a whirl this way. But we'll be bringing the same insights we bring you every week. And Steve, let's start out with an update. What do you have from us from kind of update from last week?
So last week with Kristen, there was a few things that I had put on there to monitor: tanker traffic, diplomatic talks, and inventory levels. So first, between July 3rd and 5th, there was 108 vessels that transited through the Strait of Hormuz. And since then, there has been 4 vessels that have had reports of attacks by Iran, with no response from the U.S. yet.
Yeah, it's interesting you're talking about the transits through the strait. Actually, going to bring up a quick graphic here for us to take a look at both the outbound and inbound traffic for the strait. And what you can really see is it starts out in May, obviously, during the heavy part of the war, and it comes back up to the last few days. And what we've seen here is there was this big glut of ships waiting to get out and into the strait. You got to remember that we're looking at all ships here. So you have oil ships dying to get out, and you have also some commodity ships and other food sources, things like that, that have been dying to get back in on both sides of the strait. And so what we've really seen right now is as that strait's starting to open, it was kind of like unkinking the hose, where everything went out as quickly as possible, and then same thing in as quickly as possible. And we saw some flare ups, and you've kind of seen those numbers come down. I think what we're going to need to really look forward here to is does this continue? Once these ships get out, are they going to come back in? And once these inbound ships bring the stuff in, are they going to be stuck in there getting back out? As you mentioned, we had a few ships hit. A natural gas tanker was hit. Is at risk of exploding. So there's some major stuff going on. No retaliation yet, but this is all kind of new news. So we'll see what happens from here. But again, I think we'll have to continue to watch. Again, is this just all the ships getting out? Or are they all going to come back? And when they come back, how are they going to be able to get through as easily as they got out? So that's what we got to keep an eye on.
So it sounds like some barrels are moving out of the strait. I've also been watching the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the U.S. crude stocks. Last week I saw hit the lowest level since 1983. So the buffer is continuing to dwindle down in the market.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens here now. I mean, as we've seen, obviously this deficit of oil has got to be made up from somewhere, and that either comes from lessening demand or pulling off inventories. I think you'll see some countries trying to fill up with a little bit of oil coming out now. One of the big stories, obviously, is Iran. For the time being, not being sanctioned on their oil, really kind of being able to sell their oil out. And again, what you saw there is, when they stopped, the blockade stopped all the tanks filled up. And again, that's all kind of rushed into the market. So I think you'll see some people, filling up off of that right now. But again, the question becomes is it enough to fill up, and what happens next? Is the real question.
And last week we mentioned some question marks around China returning to the market. Have you seen anything on that?
Yeah, so China's actually been a very interesting one. I think that, we would have had a lot more challenges in this market if China did not behave the way they did. And really what China did was actually, very smart. In 2025, they filled up their inventory. And then when prices got real high, they said, I'm not buying, crude oil at $100 a barrel. I've got a ton of, $50, $60 a barrel crude oil sitting in tank. And they use that. So actually, going to bring up another chart now to kind of show you what I mean on China. What this chart's going to show you is both China's crude oil imports as well as their oil inventories. And what you can see is this yellow line shows their imports. Their imports have been pretty high. And you'll see in 2025, they were clearly importing more than they were using. And so what they've really done is kind of drive their inventory up to an all-time high right before we had the issues in the Strait. And since then, what you've seen them is they've really drastically lowered their purchases. And that's really what kept the world from having even more issues than it had. And they started to draw down these inventories. Their inventories are still pretty high. Some of the things with China is that, they did tap their SPR. They also reduced their refinery runs, and they reduced demand within their countries. And with the refineries running less and really only putting products in their own country, they also reduced their exports. Because again, China took a lot of crude oil in, but they also exported some good refined products out. And so you've seen that cut as well. But yeah, China has been very interesting. Something we need to continue to watch here. If it gets back to being a challenge getting through the strait again, how long can they keep their demand down? How long can they not export? And if they're not exporting products, someone else needs to make up for it, and when do they really need to come back and start purchasing at that level again, and how long will their SPR last? So a lot to watch still with China here.
And over the past week, I've noticed the crude price staying somewhat stable or even going down, but the distillate prices have told a different story.
Yeah, that's another interesting we've seen here. And again, people are expecting crude prices come down. Why aren't product prices coming back to level? Crude's getting close to the price that it was pre-war, but product prices, gasoline distillates are still way up. And besides the gasoline people on the street, the gas stations, again, like they say, up like a rocket, down like a feather. There's a little bit of that, but I think the biggest thing we're seeing right now is honestly the crack spreads. And I'm going to throw up another chart here for you to take a look up on some crack spreads. And what 321 means is for every 3 barrels of crude brought into a refinery, it's producing 2 barrels of gasoline and 1 barrel of distillate. That's the average, displacement for a typical refinery. And one of the things you're going to see here is that the crack spreads have gone from $20 up to $60 a barrel over the course of this year. So a drastic increase. And these are some incredible cracks right now. And what you're seeing is that during the war, they have really maintained that level. And that basically means that, yes, the price of crude is down, but the price of the final product is actually way more. So anyone who's buying crude oil and turning it into products, owns a refinery, is having a stellar year right now, and they're making a ton of money. But again, that comes at the expense of the rest of the market where those prices need to raise. And people ask, why would the cracks go up so high? And really, cracks go up high for a simple reason. It's supply and demand. And that's that right now there is not as much supply of refined products as there is for demand for it.
And last week we talked about forwards, but we also posted a series of videos online about our contracts. Anything for our customers on forwards?
Yeah, I would say to our customers, first of all, if you don't understand any of the programs, please do take a look at our YouTube channel, and you'll see a deeper explanation of how each program works and what it offers to you. But beyond that, obviously the biggest question we get around any forward programs is, should I be buying now or should I be waiting? And we're not going to sit up here and give you guys advices on prices. It just wouldn't make sense. We don't know. If we knew whether the price of oil was going up or down, we wouldn't need to be doing this. We'd be making money on trading that. Having said that, what you should be thinking about is look at the price of our forward programs, our forward offers right now, and ask yourselves, will your customers buy it? And I think that's the key question here, is that if you can sell it to the homeowner, then you should be buying it now. I wouldn't speculate right now. I certainly wouldn't, and you shouldn't, about whether prices are going to go up or down. So if the homeowner's happy at the price, I would lock in what you could sell. We have small volume forwards are a great way to do it. Small volume heat curves. You can go in, and it only takes a couple homeowners to get together before you can go ahead and buy one of these programs. And so again, buy what you can sell what you can buy. Keep yourself back to back, and just watch out, because again, this could go either way.
Well, that wraps up this week's market update. Thanks for watching, and we'll be back next Wednesday with another refined products review. Refine your insight.
Fuel your success.
The U.S. crude stocks had reached the lowest point since April of 1893. It's actually not 1893, it's 1983. So hold on.